Welcome to Wildflow, the podcast with me, your host, Charlotte Pointeau. I'm a wild feminine cycle coach here for the awakened woman who is ready to reclaim her body, menstrual cycle, and feminine power, and to live, love, and lead in flow with nature's wisdom. In this podcast, I'll share how you can live in sync with your menstrual cycle and life seasons, heal your relationship with your womb and rites of passages, and embody your wild feminine as a multi-passionate woman in life, mothering, and business. It's your time to flourish as a cyclical being in this modern world. Are you ready? Let's flow. Hey lovely, welcome back to Wildflow with me, Charlotte. It's really lovely to have you here. How are you? How are you going today? I'm currently on day 30 in my cycle. I'm just post-ovulation and in the early phase of my premenstrual phase. So I'm feeling, how am I feeling today? I'm feeling quite tired, but I'm feeling good, but I'm starting to notice a shift. And my mindset is starting to feel less sassy and confident and resilient. And I'm starting to become a little bit more sensitive. But I'm good. I'm feeling well, looking after myself, prioritizing what I say yes to and what I say no to as well, really feeling into what feels right for me. So how are you? Where are you in your cycle? And how's it feeling for you? So today's episode is all about connecting with your inner seasons. So you might have heard of this. This might be something that you know heaps about, the inner seasons of your menstrual cycle. And this might be something that you're curious about and you've been hearing people talking about there being in their inner winter or spring, for example, and you might not quite know exactly what this means and what the implications are. So I'm going to explain to you what this is all about. So as I've explained in previous episodes, there were 4 different phases to your menstrual cycle, and these are driven by your naturally occurring hormonal shifts, where your hormone levels rise and fall in this amazing synchronized pattern and rhythm, where different combinations of your sex hormones drive the main events of your cycle. So that's ovulation and then your bleed, menstruation. And as these hormone patterns shift and change, it brings with it different energy in your body, different feelings, different mindset, different levels of confidence and creativity, and all of these other aspects to yourself beyond the physical sensation. So all of your other energies are affected and driven by your hormones, and it happens in quite a predictable pattern. And a way of understanding how these shifts and change happen is you can relate to it by referring to each phase as one of your inner seasons. So just like the seasons out in the world, in the natural world, winter, spring, summer, and autumn, you can relate to these 4 phases of your menstrual cycle in the same way. And it's quite amazing how much overlap there is between the qualities of the natural seasons and what's really going on in your body. So I first came to learning about these shifts, these seasonal shifts, when I read a book called 4 Seasons in 4 Weeks. And that was written by Suzanne Mathis McQueen. And it was the first time that I realized that there was so much more going on within my body than just these wild and predictable hormones and a period and nothing else happening in between. That's when I realized there was this whole world in there. And at the time I came to this book, and I can't really remember how I found it. I think I was scanning like a book website and saw this title and thought, what's that about? I was postpartum with my second child. I was experiencing a bit of tenderness at ovulation and my skin was a bit out of balance. I had some hormonal spots coming and going, and my period at that time was coming about every 5 weeks or so. And I really wanted to learn about what was going on and why I was feeling all of these things, why my skin was not great, why my cycle was longer, what was happening, how I could support myself to maybe bring my cycle back to the state that it had been in before, and to help clear my skin, but also the moods and the the energy shifts that I was feeling but couldn't put language to. So reading this book gave me an understanding that there was really a new phase of the cycle happening every week or so that I could feel, and it was being reflected back to me, like I say, in my mood and my skin and the feelings that I felt in my womb space. And this book presented each phase of the cycle as being just like a season that we see in nature. So learning about how our bodies and how my body move through those changing seasons, it suddenly opened to this whole new door to understand myself, and I suddenly felt a bit more self-aware, a bit more in control, more self-compassionate and self-loving. And it just made so much sense. And I was just like, what is this? Like, I just felt like I was really drawn into learning more about it. So that's been about 4 years or so. I've been on this journey really learning about the inner seasons and the cycles. And yeah, it's changed a lot for me, like how I relate to my cycle and my body. So this seasonal approach is super powerful, and I'd want to explain it to you. So just like in nature seasons, each season is different. It feels different, and you're really familiar. You know what winter's like. It's cold. All the trees are, the deciduous trees drop their leaves. Animals hibernate. It's a cold time. It's when we don't go out so much. You might not be swimming out on a freezing winter day, although thinking about it, I've got friends who certainly do. And on the flip side, summer is when we have summer holidays. It's hot. We want to be outside, but also keeping cool. It feels like a more fun time. We might go on a holiday as well. It might be a time of catching up with friends and being a bit more sociable, and everything feels kind of a bit more exciting, I think, as well. Busy as well. So, we know what these natural seasons are like around us. In that way, we can relate to what's going on within our body, because when we understand how we experience our inner seasons as well, then we can have that more predictability, and we can learn how to get the best out of ourselves, but also support ourselves too. If you're a gardener or a nature lover, you'll know that different tasks need to be tended to in the garden in different seasons. So seeds go into the earth as winter ends and spring begins. Plants are tended through spring, harvested in summer, and eaten into autumn. Obviously, some plants and vegetables are different, but on the whole, that's like the general pattern, right? So flowers go through their natural cycle of seed, growth, blossom, bloom, fade, decay, death, and then rebirth in the next cycle. And that's just the same as what's happening within our body across the menstrual cycle. So each phase brings with it, like this season, brings a different energy that we can work with. When we remember that we too are nature, we're not separate from it, and that we have a life cycle, not just from birth to death, but within each month within the menstrual cycle, then we can really start to work with our seasons and our energies. So what are these seasons in the cycle, you ask? So if we start with winter, that's like the menstrual phase of your cycle. So it matches the time of your bleed, your period. So what is your winter like for you, your inner winter? And how do you like to experience the season of winter in the natural world? So whether, if you're in the northern hemisphere, this is going to be around Christmas time, December, January, February. If you're in the southern hemisphere, this will be, June, July, August. But if you're in a climate where you don't have 4 strong seasons, if you're somewhere that's a bit more tropical, for example, then you might relate to your seasons differently. So these are all just invitations for you to think on and to feel and to notice how you respond to the seasons, and to recognize the patterns and the overlaps and the similarities and the contrasts between the outer season and your inner season, because it's just so beautifully mirrored. So in your body, in your winter phase, which is your menstrual phase, your body is undergoing death and rebirth. Your period, your womb lining is being shed, and your egg that has, if you ovulated, is being released. It's decayed, it's died, it's no longer viable, it's been reabsorbed back into your body, and it's been released as part of the womb lining. So your hormones drop just before your period, and they stay relatively low during your bleed. This can really pull your focus inwards into more of an intuitive, dreamy, slow state. You might not feel as sociable. You might have lower energy. You might feel more sensitive physically, emotionally, and psychically. It's time to rest and reset as much as possible. And in my inner winter, I still work, I still parent, I still do housework, and I do, a lot of the things. I just do it in a different way. I do less. I move more slowly, more thoughtfully, and more aware of what I need and how I can balance what I have to do with what I need. It's a time when I want more support. I want to be tended to, and I need things to be a little bit more about me first, generally. Archetypally, in my softest, most intuitive, like my nurture mama kind of energy. So I'm a bit slower, a bit kind of dreamier. I bring my children close. I like them to, invite them to look after me and to think about, what I might need, and to make the house a bit quieter. I really love my husband to cook for me if he can at this time. I delegate much more housework. And I feel like I also have this more kind of awareness of, the world around me and, everything that's going on. And I see things kind of clearly in this intuitive kind of dreamy way. It's also represented by the archetype of the crone, which is the phase of a woman's life, 75 to her death. So the crone woman was historically shamed, vilified. She was treated like, the witch, the hag, like this really scary and also ostracized character in our world. And in the fairy tales, she was always cast as like this evil child eating witch. Whereas going back over such a long time, like thousands of years, the crone was the wise woman. She was the woman who lived her life, who'd seen all the things, and nothing fazed her anymore. Nothing shocked her. She'd seen it all, and she'd gathered all of her wisdom, and she was passing it on to the next generation. So she was the wise woman who the village sought counsel from. And I think it's a really beautiful match for this inner winter phase of your life. It's a time when, you can look back on the cycle that's been, but if you allow yourself space to embody this kind of visioning or dreaminess or intuitive psychic energy that opens up to you, then you can access this wisdom if you can sit back and see it. It's a really, really magical thing. So winter, just like the natural world around you, a time of hibernation and slowing down, of death and rebirth, of wanting to keep warm and snuggle and slow. A time of rest and reset, a time of visioning for what might come in the cycle ahead. Just like you would in winter, you'd start to vision what's going to happen when spring arrives. And in the gardening sense, what are you going to plant? What seeds of intention might you plant in your next cycle? So we start with winter. Spring comes next. This is when your bleed ends, and it lasts for, it varies. It depends on how long your cycle is. On the average menstrual cycle, each season is about a week. So if you imagine it, if your cycle is anywhere around the 4-week, 1 month mark, then your spring would arrive when your bleed ends and last for about a week. If your cycle's longer or shorter, then your spring will change as well. It won't be a week, it might be shorter or longer. It's the time when the egg's maturing in your body, in your ovaries, and your hormones are rising. And this energy rising, it pulls your awareness more outwards. So back outwards, back from this hibernation outwards. It can feel like time to get going again, just like in nature. Lambs are born, seeds are sprouting, new life, new growth. And it can feel like that in your body, like this energy is pulling you upwards and outwards again. It's really important to remember to pace yourself. It's a time for doing, making, planning, and putting your focus into creations, and to really think about what you're calling in this cycle. So you're in your spring when your bleed ends, and this lasts until you approach your ovulation, which occurs in your inner summer. So how do you know when you're in your inner spring? It's, like I say, when your bleed ends, and it's up until the midpoint of your cycle. So if you know how long on average your cycle is, it's when your bleed ends until about the midpoint of your cycle. You'll notice that your body starts to create more cervical fluid, which you might also know as discharge. And at this point, it starts to become more in quantity. It might be creamy and thicker. Your cervical fluid starts to become thinner when you get closer to summer. So that's another sign to look for. And in my spring, I always have this feeling of like, what's going on? Where am I? Like, what's going on in the world? What's everyone been up to recently while I've been in this more inward state? I feel like I want to start creating. And I'm like, I've got to catch up on all the things. So it's really important for me to remember to pace myself, to choose wisely, to be discerning, and not to burn the candle at both ends. That's really important in this time. So I feel like it's, I'm really ready to make business and life plans. And my gaze lifts from, living in the very present moment, which is generally, how it can feel to be in your inner winter, and to look more towards the future. So archetypally, I'm a bit more of a boss. I feel like I'm a bit more ready to start going and doing all the things. But, it's also a time of planning and creating, but being open to all possibilities as well. Inner summer. So this is when your hormones are peaking and your strongest egg is released from your ovary, which is ovulation. It's when you have your highest energy and it's starting to surge, just like the outward summer. So, the heat and the intensity. Summer holidays are often quite busy times, with either holidays or children. It can feel like there's lots of social things going on as well. You might feel most playful, like you most want to have fun in your body. So if you think about how you experience your summer of the year, this can be quite revealing as to how you experience your inner summer as well. So it's a time when all your earlier efforts are coming into fruition and all that earlier hard work is starting to pay off, and you can start to enjoy the benefits. It's a time when you might feel most overtly sexual, sensual, that it's easier to care for and be around others. However, lots of people really struggle with their inner summer because it can be a really challenging, exhausting time. Lots of women notice that they don't have the energy that, they expect to have at this time. It can be really tiring, and it can be a time of high demands and also pain. Lots of women experience discomfort around ovulation, or a lot of shadow aspects coming up as well. So just notice how you feel in your inner summer at this time of ovulation. What is it that you need to look after yourself? What is it that you feel comes easily to you? Because it can be so different. You might feel that your energy is shifting just before ovulation, and this can last for a number of days after ovulation. Some of my clients tell me they notice their rising energy happens before they ovulate and others after ovulation, almost in this way of, I think about it as like an Indian summer, if you know what that is. So like where summer almost arrives late, it's like, it doesn't happen at the time it's meant to. And, this first month of autumn, when the seasons are meant to cool down and the lights start to get a bit darker, can actually be this moment of high energy and beautiful weather. And lots of women experience their summer like that too, where they have their peak in their energy after ovulation. So how do you know when ovulation is, when your inner summer is? Ovulation as the actual event, you can only really pinpoint it after it's happened. Although you can predict when you think it's on your way, but you can't confirm it until it's happened. The best way to tell is by tracking your cervical fluid. So as it gets thinner, wetter, stretchier, and your estrogen levels rise, ovulation is close. But you can also use a BBT, which is a basal body temperature thermometer. And this helps you to confirm ovulation afterwards, because your body temperature, your first temperature in the morning, rises in a really predictable pattern. And once you ovulate, it's about 2 weeks until you bleed. So that's how you can pinpoint when you are in your inner summer. Archetypally, your inner summer is aligned with the mother season of life. So this sense of giving and nurturing and this energy that you've got that overflows. And, for some people that can feel easy, and for other people at this time it can feel like a real challenge. And there's also two ways of looking at it. It can be a time of giving, but it can also be a really beautiful invitation to retain that energy and look after it and give it to yourself. How can you give that to yourself rather than giving it away? And to really enjoy that and to put your ovulatory energy back into yourself instead of into others. So in my inner summer, I feel much less tired, even if I've slept badly, and I've, have this tendency to want to stay up late, to be sociable, to party or have date nights or, watch TV till really late. It's when I feel like I want to crack out the wine and the chocolate and, have my husband stay up as well. And, we usually want to go out for a date night as well at this time. So it's quite interesting because I notice it. I feel much more resilient. I feel like I'm much more fun to be around and easygoing as well. In my work, my alter ego, Sassy Charlotte, comes out to play. She makes queen decisions. I feel like I most easily embody CEO mindset at this time, and I can tune into my inner truth and express what I really think and want to say with far less concern for whether I should say that or just tone it down a bit. I find decision making a bit more easy. And I feel like I can just ride this wave of like adrenaline almost. It's not adrenaline. It's like this high. I just feel like I can ride this wave of confidence and, feeling much more sure in myself. So I experience that in my summer. Other people really don't. This can come at different phases of the cycle. So check in with yourself. How do you feel at this time? How do you feel before you ovulate, if you know when you ovulate, versus how you feel after you ovulate? How does your inner summer mirror or contrast to how you feel in your outer summer? I'd love to know. Then after you ovulate, a few days later, your inner autumn arrives. So this is post-ovulation time until your next bleed. It's your premenstrual time. And it's very alike autumn because your hormone levels now are shifting. They're starting to drop. So no longer at their peak, they are starting to drop. Your estrogen, which is what drives your outward focus of your spring and your summer, that drops off, and in its place, progesterone rises. And progesterone is more of a chilled and inward vibe. Progesterone's role is to support and sustain the egg if it becomes fertilized for pregnancy. So this is the time when this particular hormone rises. And what's happening in your body, it's all about letting go, just like autumn leaves. Your body has done her work for the cycle and she's packing up, ready to either grow a baby or bleed. So some women, I've got clients who absolutely adore their inner autumn. This is when they feel like their queen CEO badass self. They feel really rooted and grounded and sure of themselves. They're able to make those decisions. They're much more clear and certain, productive. Other people feel like this is the time when they get their inner critic. They start to get more sensitive. I noticed that about halfway through my autumn, so I really enjoy the first half. I feel like, it's nice to kind of take my foot off the gas a bit. But then towards the second half, just before my bleed comes, I can start to feel self-doubt. I feel like I want to throw in the towel. I start questioning why I'm even bothering, wasting my time because, is it even worth it? And what's the point? And I always, every single month, I have the same thoughts that come to mind, and it's become quite common, that I sense it. And so now I know, and I go, there you are again. Hey, how are you going? Thanks for trying to keep me safe. Thanks for trying to conserve my energy. Thanks for having my back, but it's cool. I'm good. I don't need you. I'm completely see where you're coming from, and I know that this is just my pattern and all is well. And so I can really talk, like have this conversation with her and be, quite a bit more resilient, I think, in terms of my, inner critic experience. However, a lot of people feel like, their energy is dropping, and that can feel not very nice. Perhaps it's something that you've not achieved in the cycle that you hope to, and now you feel like your body's just slowing down on you, and it can feel inconvenient and disappointing. Other people, like autumn, don't like the darkening nights and the coolness and feel sad that summer's over. And so, this is a pretty good metaphor for how some of us love and others hate the premenstrual phase. If you hate it, there's all kinds of things that you can look at. Ask yourself, self-inquiry, looking at what it is about slowing down and becoming inwards, resting, winding up. What's your relation to productivity? There's all kinds of questions that can really help you to look at, what your experience is. So as part of your cycle charting practice, notice what your mindset's doing and how you feel about it. But just remember, autumn is the time when leaves get dry and crunchy. They decompose and start to form compost for the next year ahead. And this is what your premenstrual phase is like too. Looking at what's gone well and what hasn't. And trusting that everything, all of these lessons are going to fuel and nourish your next cycle. Archetypally, your inner autumn is aligned with the wild woman and the enchantress, which is the character who breaks walls, who is grounded and rooted in herself and her knowing. She knows exactly who she is. She has lived her life, she has learned some lessons, and she has gained so much power from that. And she is using that power for good for herself and for other people. But she's no longer able and willing to put up with BS and rules that just don't serve her or others, in fact. She's a woman who's a truth teller, and she rebels, but not out of rebellion's sake, in the way of empowering herself and other people, really. And this is one of my favorite archetypes to work with, this wild woman, this enchantress. And what would you do if you were going to embody that in your inner autumn? How might that influence your experience of your inner autumn, but also how can you sit in that energy across your cycle as well? And so you don't feel sideswiped every single cycle. A lot of this is mindset. It can bring up wounds from the past, how you feel supported to embody your cyclical changes, how your physical and emotional experiences play out, whether you've got health conditions that are linked to your cycle and are exacerbated by a cycle, like PCOS, endometriosis, and also mental health conditions. These are really influenced, within your cycle as part of your cyclic experience. So it's really important to look at, the points where you struggle in your cycle. It's powerful to look at how well you're flowing with your cycle as a whole, knowing that there might be health conditions underneath or more of mindset challenges. What can you do to support yourself from a physical point of view, but also an emotional, mental, and spiritual point of view to help you improve your cycle experience and to get the best out of your cyclic energies and the powers that come through as you move through your inner seasons. So if your cycle's about 25 to 30 days long, remember that each phase of your cycle is going to be about 1 week long or so. If your cycle's longer, then you're ovulating 2 weeks prior to your bleed. So say your cycle's 5 weeks long, you're ovulating around the 3-week mark because it's always 2 weeks between ovulation and your bleed. If you've got a much shorter cycle, then you're going to move through your inner spring much faster and get to ovulation quicker. This is why cycle charting can be so helpful, so that you can learn to identify which season you're in, and from there, learn how to cycle sync your life, but also support yourself with how you experience your cycle. It's pretty cool. I'm currently putting together an intimate group experience where I'm just so excited to support women who are ready to lift the lid and look within to see how you can cycle sync your life in an empowered, soulful container that's just for the most badass women who are really, really committed to making the changes, to living life on their terms, to calling in boundaries, and to really stepping into their fullest expressions, using the lens of cycle awareness to do this. So my program is called Cycle Sorcery, and it's going to guide you to go deeper within to meet your wild feminine and your cyclic power. Cycle Sorcery is also really looking at this enchantress and wild woman archetype that I was explaining about in relation to the inner autumn season of your cycle. How can you work with this? What would you do if you were in your most empowered, feminine, magic making, rule breaking self? What would you do with that? Who would you be, and what would you say yes to, and what would you say no to? How would you be living your life and showing up for yourself? And that's what I really want to invite women to connect in with in this experience, a place where you can be seen and witnessed in this exploration for yourself, where you can shake up the way that you're showing up and the way that you're using and giving your energy away to others and to other things, and how can you call it back for yourself. So this is going to be an invitation to sit in our wild womb coven, to remember your inner authority, to meet the heart of your wild feminine soul, to cultivate deep knowing and relationship with your body, your intuition, and your cycle. You're going to step into your inner queen and confidently express and embody what is true for you. It's about coming home to yourself and your body and your cycle. It's for the bold, the brave, and the curious, whether you are brand new to cycle awareness or whether you already are living, breathing, and embodying it daily. This is your sacred container to share your fascination with womb wisdom and to be supported by a supportive, healthy sisterhood to help you take your transformation where you want to go. So it's for women with a cycle and without a cycle as well. It doesn't have to be a regular cycle at all. It's for whatever is true for you. And it's going to include a rich, evocative opening ceremony, 5 months of group coaching calls and sacred circles, our own Facebook group, and a closing ceremony with 5 modules, each one containing a lesson, a ritual, practices, and shamanic dream journeys to invite you to deepen into this exploration for yourself. And this is just going to really help you to expand your comfort zone and your capacity to live, love, and lead on your own intuitive, cyclic terms, to understand your menstrual cycle and to spend time healing your relationship to your womb, and to curate your own toolkit, your medicine bag of cyclical practices and embodiment practices that support you to step into your wild feminine, your enchantress, your wild woman archetype, reclaiming this wildness that's within us, and this wild flow. And for me, that's what this podcast is all about. It's about reclaiming life, our bodies, our essence for ourselves and not for anybody else. And how can we connect with what's true for us instead of what we are told is our truth, or the way that we should show up, or what should be true for us? What is actually true for you? Who are you, and what do you want? I want you to unleash your inner wild flow. It's currently open as a waitlist. So if you're interested in joining this program, then I'd love you to come over to join the waitlist, and I'll pop the link in the show notes. And then I'm going to be opening enrollments to the waitlist only with an exclusive offer just for you. And then later on, any remaining places will be open to public sale. So you'll get a very special VIP introductory price when you join the waitlist if you enroll in the early bird window. So if that feels like something that's going to help you to go much, much deeper, then I would love you to join. And I would love to hear how you feel about your inner seasons. So which season's your favorite? And which season is your most challenging, and why? Right, my loves, wishing you well, wishing a beautiful season of your cycle wherever you are at, and I will be with you next time. Goodbye. Thank you so much for listening in. If you're loving this podcast and you'd love to help me spread the wisdom shared, please leave a review or rating, or share this with somebody who you think would love to listen in. I'm really passionate about creating ripples of change and getting this information to more women, girls, and people with a cycle so that they can reclaim their cyclic natures too. And if you'd love to dive in deeper with learning more about how to connect with your cycle and rites of passages, come and join our free Wild Flow Circle community, or choose a course and learn with me on my online learning hub. All the links are in the show notes. And until next time, be well and go with the flow of your cyclic nature.